What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Austin, and welcome to the DevvE Roundup. And with me, as always, Mr. Davin Broadbent. Davin, I hear it's getting cold in Australia.
It is freezing. It is, it's not what you kind of expect. It's properly cold here at the moment.
My
Hence
God,
the hoodie. Apologies for my less than formal attire.
hoodies are nice, but outside right now, you got it's not just hot in Florida; it's humid, and like literally, you have 4 minutes until you need a new shirt. That's how nasty it is out. Anyhow, I digress. So we got to call a spade a spade. We got to call it like we see it, right? So I'm in the chats. I'm reading through the chats with the community because this is a community update, right? And I want to hit it where it is. And I can hear it, the wind out of their sails. They're going, what's going on? We got a bull run. No, I said the word, but whatever. We got a bull run kicking off. And they want to know what the hell's going on. And I know that you feel that, and I know that you read the comments and you see what's going on. And I wanted to kick it over to you because we've been for the last, just me personally for the last year and some change, but you for longer than that, we've been painting the vision of all these things. Right. And granted, you take the whole thing, you got a good bucket of things, but that was my very educated way of saying it. But I want to kick it over to you. I mean, what would you say to the community right now?
Yeah, look, I completely get it. And, I understand that, there is probably a large amount of, impatience and frustration. And again, I don't want to downplay that at all. We as a team are acutely aware of, market positioning, where we are, what's going on. And, contrary to, I guess, what a lot of, kind of commenters and kind of people have said, we do care, 100% we care. We want to make sure that, we're doing all of the right things in order to build, a multi-generational business for not just our community, but for, all of the new people that are going to find our project and find what we're doing, and use our infrastructure, use our technology, but more importantly, the token. And I guess one of the things that I would like to cover off, outside of, you've heard all of the vision. You and I have had these conversations, in terms of what we're building, why we're building it, how we're doing it. We are not, necessarily moving at the speed that kind of crypto and crypto markets, would like to see, which is, light switch, instant overnight success type thing. That's not to say that we're not putting all of those things in place, because we are unequivocally. It's literally a process of kind of putting all of the key pieces of not just infrastructure, but, in terms of the partnership connections and all the rest of it. For that overnight success to happen, it has taken us, like, as you said, 6-7 years. But they are coming to fruition. They are paying off. Where we will get to, which again, we're asking for a little bit of faith and a little bit of trust us, but where we will get to very, very, very soon is this complete kind of, DeFi to TradFi financial inclusion in, infrastructure and ecosystem that will bring this kind of orders of magnitude value, not just to people that, are participating, but to people who have, held our token. And I guess, completely kind of acknowledging the kind of frustrations when they're seeing, these kind of green candle days and these market movement days and things like that. And, why are we not doing that, or why are we not part of this? What I do want to say to that, and potentially what I want to address, is that, not only is that kind of on the horizon, but more importantly, what we're trying to build into, the token and the ecosystem, the infrastructure, is literally game changing in terms of, orders of magnitude of utility that will continue to drive value on multiple different touch points. And, if we have, I guess, time to dig into that a little bit today, I'd like to, maybe go over some of the things that we're kind of baking in, just to kind of reinforce and showcase, why it's important, more importantly, to kind of, see those different value opportunities for what they are, but to potentially see the longer term, and by longer term, I'm not talking years, by the way. This isn't like, join me in a decade as we update. We are working frantically, with the resources that and the capabilities that we have to make sure that these things are executed on.
Well, I think we should definitely get into the utility then. Perhaps a, I don't know what you'd want to call it, a reminder for those who know, or an explainer for those who don't know, because I have to acknowledge a lot of this information is buried within old Medium articles or releases. It isn't actually really focused in one place, which, perhaps that's something we need to put on the horizon here, manpower permitting. But anyhow, so let's talk about this. So some of the new novel ways in which DevvE is going to be used, right, is in devise, it's, to use your word, ubiquitous throughout Dev Exchange. It's the connector for every trade. Can you expand a little bit on what that really means?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, this is, I think novel is probably one way to describe it, but is unique, in terms of a USP, but it's also unique in terms of, people with, any kind of current experience in terms of crypto or tokens, and how they operate. We've seen, the market, kind of evolve around this concept of, gas is probably the most, kind of widely known utility. Rewards tokens, again, if you follow that from a, kind of logical, progression in terms of the economics of how that works, inflationary and deflationary tokens, all of these things, not a zero sum game, but it's kind of, it's a circular movement of value as those things are being traded on ups and downs. We've heard, various different pundits in the TradFi space kind of looking at, what's happening in the crypto space and, throwing around, all sorts of disparaging comments in terms of, it's, literally a game of exit liquidity, or it's a game of this. And, you're seeing kind of larger investors take advantage of smaller investors. Some of those things are arguably true. In the retail crypto space, there is this, in some cases, a kind of a casino vibe, and a lot of that, kind of reflects on, token value and necessarily the core pieces that underpin how people value projects or value things that they participate in. What we're trying to do is abstract a lot of that and create real value and real utility, where every trade effectively in our ecosystem will be routed through DevvE. And that again creates just, an order of magnitude of value, but also, if you're looking at supply and demand, if you're looking at, any of the kind of critical pieces from an economic standpoint as to why, an economy is valuable, or why, these things, have, deliberate and baked in use. That is one of the critical ones. Why do I need to do this? Why am I not using, an alternative, means of kind of, fungibility or kind of exchange? We can answer those questions unequivocally. Now, on the device side, that's incredibly exciting. So, and it's not just about the, liquidity provisioning. It's about all of the things that fall out of the back of that. So, in every, and again, I'm using financial terms, but it's not just about finance, right? It's not just about, creating a financial ecosystem, in terms of payment rails or in terms of, exchange. As we think about exchange, it's about value. It's about all of the different things that value could represent. And that isn't always about money in terms of, how people are thinking about, financial products or financial services. These are just examples of ways that people can see crypto working in a very, efficient way, right? We all heard the kind of let's abstract, or let's kind of get rid of the middleman and let's make finance more effective. Let's, reduce costs and fees on, international transfers, or, let's make payment rails more, transparent. All of those types of things. These things we can do. These are not, these are things that we are actively working towards, but they're not the biggest, most exciting pieces. In terms of the entire infrastructure, having, our token right at the center of that in terms of participating in each one of those different value exchanges and delivering that value, that unlocks a whole range of different products and services, opportunities, and ways that people can, either amplify that value or participate in that value. And that just doesn't exist in the current kind of retail, blockchain or crypto space. And so that's the one of the critical keystone differences that we're talking about in terms of how our system and infrastructure and operationally we will approach what we're doing with not just financial services, but with wider data services, wider infrastructure services, and at an application layer, deliver that value to our users. And that's, again, it's a broad statement. There's a lot in there, but to unpack that at an individual level from like a value proposition, I think is kind of critical that people understand. And that plays to things that everybody's talking about currently in terms of, market movements, etc.
Excellent. And I love when Davin, goes on a rant like that, because, Davin knows crypto like I know crypto. He's been in it for a long time. Like, he understands the mechanisms that move it behind. Right. And so while admittedly that is like massive utility, right? When Dev Exchange comes, I have to call out the elephant in the room, which is when Dev Exchange comes. And we don't, internally, we obviously have a rough, maybe more accurate timeline than externally. But I think, I saw some comments on our last roundup because I had asked you and brought up, well, what's DevvE doing to maximize the bull run? And I guess the response that some people felt from the comments was that, like you had mentioned earlier, not necessarily that we didn't care, but we're not maybe giving it the importance. And I wondered if we can speak on that, because we really are giving it the importance. And I want, for everyone watching, I want you to know, like, I'm a DevvE holder before I'm a DevvE employee, like, as a community member first, right? So I feel this with you, Davin. We're all in the same boat, right? We're all experiencing the same things. Some of us just have a deeper purview into the events that are about to transpire. And so I wondered if you might speak to that a little bit. Could you?
No, yeah, look, I'm happy. And again, I think, Austin, one of the kind of key or critical kind of roles that and you wear many hats, but I think one of the critical roles that, you kind of play and bring is that, we've never stopped you from asking the questions. We've never said to you, you can't say that or you can't do this. You generally do wear, the hat of the community advocate, token holder, investor. Yeah, exactly right. And we're not holding a gun to your head and saying, please don't ask us those difficult questions, or and please keep doing that, right? Because again, it's super important. I guess to kind of address and answer your question, we are kind of ramping up efforts on all sides. It is, outside of probably the 4 or 5 critical work streams that we're progressing through in terms of partner integrations, in terms of technology hardening, and in terms of bringing in kind of infrastructure around partnerships, which we've talked about with De La Barque, et cetera. We are actively moving forward with, all of the critical pieces that need to be delivered in order to kind of deliver the exchange. But out of the back of that, if you think of the exchange as kind of the hub of a wheel, all of these additional kind of value propositions and services and kind of pieces will fall out. But we need, again, to have a clear marketing strategy and a clear kind of, a series of deliverables that impact the market, that actually convey that message and deliver, on that kind of visibility. And that involves, everything from, creating awareness, and bringing in kind of, the wider community to participate. And I can say unequivocally that, we have some of the best people, literally working on this right now. We're bringing in fresh blood as well. We've got, some very, very talented, people critically looking at key marketing strategy, and other pieces of that puzzle as we speak. And so, I can say that, it is a priority for us. Absolutely. It is a priority for us. But, what we're also trying to do is deliver on all of our promises. And we want to make sure, again, that, these things all happen in an order that makes sense, and that we can capitalize them in a way that makes sense for everybody.
Well, as Phil likes to say, nothing says marketing like green candles. And I, there's a part of me that has to agree with him on that. So aside from Dev Exchange, what are the exciting things that are on the horizon? And I want to preface this by saying, I think if I were sitting in the community shoes, which I am, and I was looking at charts, and I was looking at, all the information around DevvE, and I was saying, I want DevvE to be in the conversation, but DevVE's not in the conversation yet, right? And I think a lot of that boils down to, like, what do we have that you can touch and feel and play with and, and see, and all of those different things. So, and I do think people are really eager to know what's going on with Exchange development. What does the timeline actually look like when it launches? Are we getting a beta? Are we getting a fully fledged version? What is in production in the back end? I think is a question a lot of people, are curious about.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm probably not the best person to answer that, but what I can say is that, we are working on a fully fledged solution. Part of the, and whether or not we launch with, a wider market, solution that kind of encompasses, spot derivatives, all of those sorts of things, that comes down to questions around, regulation, around, how we manage, where those, kind of approvals come from. We are working with probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 different regulators and options at the moment. We're working with Anne Marichal again, who is, one of our board members who was responsible for drafting the MiCA regulations in Europe, to kind of navigate that process. And so, the answer is, it's a difficult one to kind of, to confirm, because some of those pieces are outside of our control. What I can say is that we are building for all of them, and we will be delivering all of them. As to what comes first, it really does depend on kind of how we navigate those kind of tricky next steps. But they are moving forward. Again, it's not something that, and I know you're smiling, right? But it's definitely something that, I guess will have an impact on the final product, but the final product will be an evolving product. And I think, again, when you're kind of delivering a best in class, platform, it's going to need to kind of address, everything that institutions want, everything that states want. It's going to need to obviously support all of the users at the end of the day with, a bulletproof, piece of infrastructure that addresses everything we've talked about, from fraud, theft, loss, and again, talking back about token utility, how all of those things are going to basically, impact, holders of the token, and anyone that kind of uses that infrastructure. That is kind of what we're looking at in terms of deployment. So while the timescales, of that are kind of dependent on a number of different things, I can say that we are kind of working towards, the plan that we've kind of discussed, and we will have a version of the platform, out within the timeframes that we have discussed. It's going to be, even if it is a beta, which, we will go through testing, phase, and we will bring out, and invite key people to participate, invite our community, and reward people for their involvement there. But, even that, I can say with confidence, is going to be as good or better than anything currently in the market, and that's a big claim, but, I've seen what we can deliver in terms of, all of the things that we've talked about in terms of the, the different operational capabilities, but the different product capabilities, and back again to fraud, theft, and loss, and those types of, systems, contingent transaction sets, on the liquidity provisioning side, and what we're doing with DevvE. All of those things combined already create a platform that is, equal to or comparable with anything that exists currently in the TradFi, space and or beyond. So from an experience point of view, from a use case point of view, from a security point of view, that's a benchmark, right? And it's only going to get better from there as we iterate, as we bring in more partners, as we deliver more things around, what we're doing with DevvE, and as that unlocks more opportunities with other banks. These are things that are going to have a net benefit for all our token holders and community members. So, that's the plan in a nutshell, Austin.
So you just got me thinking, and I've got to ask it. I'm probably going to ask it every time we do a roundup. But I know that we were moving towards a licensing structure, and there was a lot of what type of licensing is it? a specific exchange licensing? Is it, a virtual currency, a money transmitter? What type of licensing are we moving towards? And I think the reason that's on everyone's mind is because, it's not unknown that there's a partner that will jointly announce with us once we have that. So it's, it's important. How's that going? What's going on with that?
It is. Look, and it is, again, it's, all I can say is that it's progressing. And we are having conversations with multiple, kind of, regulatory frameworks and or regulators, and, looking at licensing in multiple jurisdictions. So, I would get killed if I, really kind of divulged, or spoke out of turn, around some of these things. And, having literally just gotten off a call, where we've gone through kind of some of those critical pieces, they are top of mind. And, it's early in the morning and I'm probably on my second coffee at the moment, Austin. So I'm just sharp enough to be able to avoid, that as a fairly obvious pitfall. But what I can say is, yes, we are kind of progressing through that licensing framework. It will, as I said again, encompass, because we're a non-custodial exchange, that does kind of give us some bandwidth and freedom. But if we are licensing financial products, derivatives or perpetuals, any of that type of thing, that's going to involve specific, kind of licensing and, regulation. These things very much do depend upon, how those conversations progress in all of the different areas that we are having them, and are kind of out of our control. So we are applying and we are going through kind of all of the licensing processes, in parallel. Which one falls out first and how that falls out is not something I can control, but we'll keep you updated on our comments.
All good, buddy. All good. Well, I appreciate you letting me at least ask the questions, because I didn't want to be the guy that I read them. I know that they're there. I know that there's a curiosity in the community to know these things. And to be frank, I don't think anyone more than you or I would love to reveal these things to the community, except if that wouldn't blow back on us later. So, all right, we better kill it there so you can get your third cup of coffee, man. Thanks for joining me, Davin. For everyone watching, my name's Austin. Catch you guys on the next video. Take care.